Princess Charlotte's response to a journalist's public question about God was so moving that it brought tears to everyone's eyes. Sitting peacefully, Princess Charlotte's young hands painstakingly traced designs on white cards as the late morning sun poured through the magnificent windows of Kensington Palace. In the other room, the Princess of Wales, Catherine, was busy organizing a charity gala, oblivious to the fact that her daughter would utter a word that would utterly stun the entire country. How likely is it that they will enjoy these? While displaying one of her handcrafted greeting cards, Charlotte inquired. A bright heart, however simple, had been drawn by her on the front. She had written "You are loved inside" in her best handwriting. With a smile on her face, Catherine reached over to remove a stray hair from her daughter's face. She whispered, They were getting ready for a charity event at a children's hospice which offered comfort, support, and care to sick and injured kids, suffering from diseases that make their lives short. Ever from her first visit to a hospice early in her royal career, Catherine has been devoted about this topic for years. The children's extraordinary resiliency, the family's quiet strength, and the staff's unfaltering commitment had long impressed her. Love, the type that remains strong even when things are tough, had a greater impact on her. Catherine was taken aback by her daughter Charlotte's eagerness to participate when she told her about the event's plans. With her brow furrowed in contemplation, Charlotte had adamantly stated that it must not just merely be a celebration. They deserve a day off from worrying about being sick, and that day should be reserved exclusively for them. For a long time, Catherine had quietly admired her daughter. The fact that Charlotte had been taught to be kind was insufficient to make her care. She was deeply concerned. Diana came to mind as the person it evoked. I had the idea on the fly. Catherine insisted her children know who their grandma was, even though Charlotte had never met her. Photos, memories, and a visit to Kensington Palace's White Garden where flowers grew in tribute to the woman who had affected so many lives were all part of their experience. Do an act of kindness for someone else out of the blue without expecting anything in return. You never know when someone else could be good to you. That was something Diana had said. Catherine pondered whether such generosity had been transmitted in some way. She realized this was going to be more than just another royal engagement as she saw Charlotte delicately put her finished cards into a little basket. A celebration of the many hands that had gone into making it what it was. This day would be full of love. Volunteers acted with subtle compassion as music floated through the corridors, and the sound of children's laughing resounded. Instead of a place of sickness, this was a safe haven where the kids could be kids. The hospice had been Charlotte's previous destination. She had accompanied her mother on her strolls through the halls, holding hands, and encountered peers her age who had experienced vastly different realities. As her mother had pointed out, many families in that area found strength in their faith. For many of the kids, it was an anchor of hope and peace. Emma was one of those kids. Emma, a quiet, thoughtful 7-year-old, had bright eyes. They had sat on the playroom floor, constructing a tower out of blocks, the previous time Charlotte had come to visit. Charlotte had informed her that she was really skilled at this. Emma had smiled as she watched with care as Emma balanced another piece on top. She had mentioned that she enjoyed constructing things. She then asked, "Do you think you'll come back?" Following a brief pause. Charlotte had hesitated, nodding. "Certainly, I intend to." The morning of the ceremony, as the car drove up to the hospice, Charlotte noticed Emma sitting at the window. As soon as the young girl laid eyes on her, her expression brightened. There was no need for Charlotte to wait for protocol. Upon entering, she hurried over to Emma and embraced her tightly. She said, "I promised I'd return." Arrangements for the celebration had completely changed the room. A table was covered in arts and craft supplies, and there were bright streamers that sparkled under the light of fairy lights. As they went from one kid to another, therapy dogs wagged their tails while a guitarist played gentle music. Charlotte wasted no time getting to work, assisting a youngster in creating a canvas rainbow. She not only helped set up the art station, but also distributed materials and got her hands dirty with paint. As Catherine observed, her daughter breezed across the room, making small talk with each and every child she encountered. She was acting more like a regular person than a princess. Charlotte was just being herself. Afterwards, an unforeseen event transpired. A weak-looking girl with weary eyes raised her question to Charlotte. What happens to people when they die? Despite her best efforts, Charlotte was unprepared for the unexpected question. Heaven and its inhabitants, particularly those like the kids here, had been a frequent topic of conversation between her and her parents. Good people went to heaven to be with God, even if it was a lot for her to comprehend. She informed the girl of this. That wasn't the last challenging question she'd face that day. She had no idea. Catherine and Charlotte were approached by parents and caregivers as the event came to a close, who quietly expressed their gratitude. The significance of this to children is beyond your comprehension, a mother whispered with tears in her eyes. To everyone here. Because she was at a loss for words, Catherine could only nod in response. Additionally, the media had taken note. More and more cameras were lining up outside the hospice's perimeter. From its humble beginnings as a one-off fundraiser for children's hospices, the event has grown into something far larger. However, Charlotte's very presence had set a subtle storm in motion. Online, there were pictures of her reading to kids, joking with them, and even crouching down by the sickest ones without a second thought. And everyone around it was spellbound. Into the late afternoon sun, Charlotte and Catherine stepped as the doors of the hospice were opened. Leaving after a day of giving should have been a simple moment for a mother and daughter. What they were unprepared for, though, was what was ahead: a media craze. It had grown into something far larger from its humble beginnings as a press presence. A flurry of activity ensued as cameras whirled around, mics extended, and reporters, anxious to get their story, whispered their requests. A familiar and unsettling apprehension settled in Catherine's chest. She was no stranger to this place. As Diana emerged from hospitals holding the hands of the ill, she had witnessed the same energy enveloping her. As she had experienced it firsthand upon entering royal life, the scrutiny and amplification of every expression she now saw it encircle her daughter. With an air of intrigue, Charlotte looked up at her mother as she continued to hold one of the homemade cards she had crafted. Not as a child they shot from a distance, but as someone they wanted to hear from. This was the first time she had ever addressed the press quite like this. Catherine was unsure. Under her protection, she could keep her safe. Like other royal children, she might hold her hand and lead her softly to the waiting automobile while smiling and saying nothing. The safe option would be to go with it. The default option. However, a journalist intervened, his voice delicate and uncharacteristically quiet. "Pretty Charlotte," he inquired. "A few of the kids you played with today are really unwell. When people depart from our